Thank you, SMS. Can I invite you to stay on the stage for a while for the panel discussion? I would now like to invite the moderator for the panel discussion, Mr. Francis Goh, to come on stage, as well as the other panelists, Associate Professor Dorcas Quek Anderson and Ms. Ng Chinese. So Mr. Francis Goh will be moderating the session. Francis is a partner of Eversheds Harry Elias LLP. He has over 27 years of experience in dispute resolution, covering the full range of international arbitration, court litigation, and mediation. As an early supporter of mediation, Francis brings a problem-solving mindset to dispute resolution. He has served with the Singapore Mediation Lecture since 2001 and is a principal mediator. And I'm going to add something that's not in the script. Francis was one of those who suggested starting this entire series of the Singapore Mediation Lecture. So this is kind of his baby. So can I pass the time to Francis to introduce the other panelists?
Thank you, Junyan. SMS, thank you for gracing our panel today. Thank you for issuing that rousing rallying cry for all stakeholders in the mediation community to unite at this critical time. Joining us on this panel as well is Dorcas Quek. She is an assistant professor at the SMU School of Law. Her research and practice focus on dispute resolution, particularly mediation. We also have Ng Chinese, General Manager, Kwok Investments Singapore Private Limited. It's a member of the Kwok Group of Companies, where she has served as General Counsel in charge of China and now plays an advisory role to their family office. So please put your hands together to welcome our panelists today. And a reminder to all of you that we are taking questions, so please feel free to send in your questions. We see some questions streaming in. But I think to get the ball rolling, maybe Chai, you can share with us mediation from the business community point of view. What really does the business community think?
Thank you, Francis. I was invited to join this panel, to share views as an end user. And coincidentally, as SMS mentioned, it was my work in China that actually brought me to mediation. I started with the group's investments in the early 90s, where the legal infrastructure is really a maze, for foreign investments going in China. So you always want to look for an elegant exit. And for us, we already actually looked to mediation at that point in time. Although in China it was never very formal, it was a bit like what SMS mentioned earlier. The courts would very strongly encourage settlements rather than full trials going on, because it all affects your statistics, your KPIs. So from there, I think we have, from my organization, we are an Asian family business. And what was mentioned earlier, preserving relationships is paramount, especially when you're a new player in the market, right? But whilst we believe in that, it's very hard for anyone there's kickback, anyone in the organization who says, let's try something flexible. It doesn't really make people very confident in decision making. So yes, we would love to use mediation. I think the convention is going to make a difference, but it's too soon to tell. But I do see that you will get that support from the business environment sector, that mediation would be the future.
Thank you. Over to you, Dorcas. From your perspective, both as an academic and as a practitioner, how would you describe the awareness of mediation in our Singapore community?
Well, I think most of us, if we compare to 10 years ago, definitely we have made great leaps and bounds in terms of the awareness of mediation. Within Singapore itself, I think, of course, there can be greater awareness. The difficulty is probably because most people will approach or find out about mediation only when you have a problem, right? So it's not like fashionable to go find out about mediation when you're very happy and life is going well, right? So I think the awareness is there, and definitely the convention being publicized so greatly does help and create that buzz, that awareness. So people are asking more and more about what this process means. So that is something to be celebrated and something definitely to be leveraged on in terms of creation of awareness. From a perspective of an academic, I think what we feel is so essential is to really equip the would-be lawyers, the current students, right? So that they see not just using mediation as a dispute resolution process, but they themselves being equipped to negotiate settlements, right? So they know the importance of negotiating or settling themselves. So they themselves can initiate that, and they would know then when they will need to employ a mediator to help them.
Right, this one is for you, SMS. We've been out there with all the hard work to promote this mediation on the international scene, but from your personal perspective and observation, is the Singapore fraternity ready to actually take this leap and take advantage of the opportunities that are now available? Perhaps share some of your thoughts.
Well, I think so. Dorcas earlier mentioned that there's need to raise greater awareness in the fraternity, in the market here. I think we never stop raising that awareness, and I think the more people are aware of it as an option, the better it will be. But in terms of are we ready to do so, I think you just have to listen to some of the SMC, SIMC mediators and the passion that they have for it. Some of them are here. I mean, look at Joel. He'll stand up there and give a 2-hour speech on mediation alone. I think the ingredients for it to work we already have. What I think now we need to do is to go out there and let the business community become more aware of the benefits of mediation. It doesn't mean that they give up anything. I mean, some people want to hold on to their legal rights and so on. That's fine. But mediation provides an alternative, an option. It can be in parallel with, or it can be a precursor step to arbitration or litigation. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. It's purely consensual. So I think that we have the hardware, the software. I think we are slowly ramping up. What we need is buy-in from the business community.
So, Francis, can I chip in on this as a potential end user? I think what we said about raising awareness and education, in order for a consumer to have confidence in this product, I think we need to see that standards are set high. So there's always that question about what now for the private practitioners. I think we've heard a lot about the institutions, and you mentioned also that Singapore is high standing because our legal professional standards are high, the judiciary is high. I think that's where the mediators need to get to. I'm certainly aware that a lot of efforts make that way, but I think until that is achieved and used as a selling point, we still have a long way to go.
Right, what we have here is a question. How can we promote our mediators in international mediations and ensure that their experience can be increased? I think this ties in with the earlier points that we were mentioning. Perhaps we can go around to each of the panelists, beginning with Dorcas. How can you see us perhaps ramping up this experience so that our mediators can benefit from the opportunities that are now present?
Right. Personally, I feel that we are quite privileged that in the Singapore context there's so much support by the state for mediation. So I have quite a few friends, mediator friends, academic friends. When they come here, they say they feel very envious because resources are put. Right. So in terms of building all the resources, the institutions, infrastructure, and also the very active outreach. I think that we are very privileged. And the call to really work together. So I think the question is really how we can make use of this and work together, particularly for the mediation community, Singapore mediators, right? How can we really work together? So this is where, as I was thinking about it, I was thinking that if we want to really share a product, right? The product or whatever we are sharing is only as good as what it is, the quality of what it is. So this is where what Chai mentioned about quality, I think is really critical. And quality frequently is an issue that in many developed countries where mediation is an advanced development, it's usually at the state of professionalization or mediation that such matters have to be paid to with even greater attention, right? Because you can't share what you don't have, right? So if you just have a process or system, but the mediators are the ones who are really providing it, right? And who really know how to wield that process. So personally, I think that together with the outreach, what has been done hand in hand in tandem is growth or mediation with depth. That means depth of quality. And this is where mediators in Singapore, I think we can play a great role, right? Because I benefited personally from so many passionate mediators who really want to spread the awareness, who want to do it even on a pro bono basis because they believe in the value of peacemaking, right? So whether we can somehow work hand in hand to, as a community, talk about some of these deeper issues. For example, how do you how do you customize something to fit the culture? How do you deal with ethical issues? How exactly, what exactly are the key elements of mediator, the role of mediator? And if we help each other in this respect to talk about these difficult issues, I think that's only a way we can equip ourselves so that Singapore mediators ourselves have the quality and also have the opportunity to grow. Regarding opportunities to grow, I think we were quite heartened because we heard Mr. Ban Junian at the SMC appreciation lunch saying that SMC is committed to giving Singapore mediators room to grow and to develop experience. So I think opportunities have been created in that respect. I also like to give a shout out to Society of Mediation Professionals, of which Chai is part of the EXCO. This was something formed by the mediators themselves or their own accord, which I think is in line with that kind of push to really create a community to discuss issues that are essential and really pressing for mediators, and to also see how we can deepen in our quality.
Chai, over to you for some comments.
Thank you for that, Dorcas. In fact, I was just talking to my very senior mentor, Mr. Giam, just now, to say that, what is it that can be done for the private practitioners? And I said, when I was a young lawyer, I just need to go to the bar room and there'll be a senior counsel who will help me if I have an issue. So we should be having that similar kind of outreach, I think, where you can have mentoring, you can have, coaching, and I think what is really lacking, and amongst the members of our society, is this thing about real experience. Where are you going to get the cases from? So I guess we just need to be hopeful that with more interest, with more convention, after post-convention interest, that there should be more caseload, but perhaps also maybe some, look as to like court annexed cases, for example. How can the professional body of mediators help to contribute to help reduce caseload? Like you said, Dorcas, more working together, where, I guess this thing about why mediation is good, that you can be creative. So we should use that same mindset and answer that question, I think.
SMS, what's the view like from Singapore Inc.?
I agree with both ladies. I'll just add one point. I think, experience can't be fast-tracked. You've got to earn it. It's got to come over time. It's got to be earned the hard way. But I think what we can do at the initial stage is to lay the foundations. And I think we got very good foundations. We've got different interest groups, the professional bodies, and the mediators that we have here haven't happened overnight. It's not because of SCM or because of SIMC, but as I said just now, over time, from the mid-1990s, we've been doing mediations. So I think it's not that we don't have the experience. Perhaps on an international platform, not quite yet. But as I said, I think that will come with time.
Okay. Thank you very much. Ms. Ng, this one is for you. Can you share some details of your mediation experience in China since the 90s and in today's environment? Perhaps a quick
That's a tough one, right?
walk through your time capsule.
I get paid by the boss to do that. Like I said, when I first started doing work in China, the mediation processes that I know were only those imposed by the courts, and I'm talking imposed. You know, all of you come together, and the judge who is going to hear your case will tell you, are you going to settle? If not, this is how I'm going to rule. And then someone, and that's true. But then when I was introduced to mediation, as we understand it, by George Lim, and then I went to do my mediation training, I said, hey, that's not mediation. So I don't think mediation proper existed in China then, but especially because, again, full disclosure, I also sit on the board of the Singapore International Mediation Center, and we've had a lot of interactions with Chinese bodies, Chinese institutions, Chinese law firms, Chinese bar associations, and the interest in mediation is tremendous, really, really strong. And what they've been looking to Singapore, and SIMC in particular, is training. They know that now they face the international market and they cannot do mediation the Chinese style. So there's a very clear distinction between international mediations and domestic mediations. And I believe China is on its way, not there yet, but they're very open to accepting what we understand to be the facilitative method of mediation.
SMS, this one is for you. What are the reservations that have been expressed by states who have not signed the SCM? During the negotiations, what were some of the key issues of convention? Perhaps you could share some insights.
That's a good question. So, if you look around the different geographical landscape and the continents, the EU had greater things to solve with the Brexit. But more importantly, they were trying to work out which is the right entity to do it, because do we do it all as a bloc or are individual countries to do so? And so there was some, I would say, legal reservations there. Then you look at ASEAN. We were very keen to get all of ASEAN on board, but so, as I said just now, half of ASEAN came on board. The other half comprised Malaysia, Indonesia and Thailand, and they had just had their elections. And I think, in fact, they're still in the process of installing the cabinet and government, so they were not able to be ready at the same level as the other countries. So we will continue to engage with them as well. Elsewhere in Asia, there was Japan. I was in Japan, we met with them. They were very keen about it, but they had their own internal processes to look after. As did many other countries. I think they looked at it appreciatively, wanted to get on board, but felt that they needed some time to process the internal mechanisms which would authorize them to be able to get into this and sign it. So that took a while, and perhaps some were not ready at the point in time when we signed it in August. But I would say this, that we had a very good start. Not that we will rest on it, but I think we will expect a fairly strong second and third wave of signatories over the next couple of months. I don't want to jinx it, but I'm reasonably confident that we will see people come on board.
Right. The next question here is, as SIMI, SIMI is the mediation standards body, how important is their role post-SCM? And should all mediators join SIMI? Perhaps a deeper context to this question is there are now different bodies in Singapore that are involved in the mediation scene. How do they interplay? Perhaps with that in mind, we could take Dorcas to share some of your views.
I was looking at Joe, SIMI. So I cannot speak on behalf of SIMI. right? But I can probably address the larger question of how they interact together, right? So probably the biggest impact which SIMI has brought to Singapore is we have a national framework for standards, mediation standards, whereas in the past, every sector, every mediation body might have its own separate and respective standards. Right? So I think it was definitely a good effort. For example, if you look at Australia, there's something they also have, a rather similar system where all the mediation bodies got together and then tried to agree on some kind of common standards. And accreditation is voluntary, right? So it then is a mark, it's maybe a stamp of approved quality by a national body. Right. So in terms of how they work together, SIDRA is located in SMU. My colleague, Professor Nadia Alexander, she's heading SIDRA, and which is the academy that SMS referred to. So that SIDRA is working together with academia, including one of the major pieces that came out was like the survey, which was done right before the convention and then released during the convention. So we do work together to see how we can then deepen the thought leadership in mediation. Right, so we've got to the others, Singapore Mediation Center. I think I should just state that I myself was trained by Mr. Loong Seng On in Singapore Mediation Center, and that was how I really got involved in mediation. So personally, I think in view of the very important role that SMC played in spreading the awareness of mediation, I think it will still be playing that role. And then working hand in hand with SIMC. SIMC is increasing the awareness of international mediation, and they do work together as well. Yeah.
Chai, you want to just jump in and share some comments?
I'm really not sure how to comment, because I'm thinking if we're looking at international commercial mediations, then maybe we need to look at broad spectrum, in terms of, like you said, if you want parties' autonomy as to, who's going to be my mediator, how restricted should we be about which member they are of a body? I don't know, some people like me like to collect alphabets after my name. So I've done my accreditation in Hong Kong, in Singapore, I've done my CEDAR, I've done a few accreditations. I ran off to Harvard to do courses. So I believe in a flexible system. Of great to have standards, but maybe we should, open up our minds and hearts.
SMS, what is the view like from the top? We've got so many different bodies that have been set up.
No, it's not.
What was the thinking behind it?
Well, I offer one observation. I think I agree with Chai that we must have standards, and I think the way to promote mediation overall is to make sure that there are standards. But I would say this, actually mediations, in one way or another, we've all done some of it, right? Mediating between siblings, your children are fighting, you go and mediate and all, that kind of thing. So actually, what it really takes for a good mediator to function is a lot of empathy and understanding the problem. Of course, you must wear a certain legal hat to it, bring to bear your legal experience and knowledge to the problem. But I think a lot of listening and a lot of empathy in terms of finding the right solution and trying to discern from this whole moray of disagreements and issues where that common bridge might be placed. That's a skill that is very personal also. And perhaps no amount of training can replace that personal empathy and the personal interest in the problem. Understanding the problem, not just that, but understanding the parties and understanding the nature and the color and the tone of the problem. Now, I think once you do that, once you come round to that and understand not only what the problem is, but why that problem exists between the parties, I think then that is the beginnings of a good mediator and a good mediation outcome.
Yes. Thank you. So the next question would be, I think, something that's on every practitioner's mind. What are the opportunities to get the younger practitioners more involved in the mediation scene? How can they get a piece of the action? So Chai, maybe we start with you first.
Advertising time, right? So the Society of Mediation Professionals is actually reaching out to members, non-members for views. What what can the community of practitioners do for each other, and how, like, the more senior can help the next generation. The idea is to promote sustainability of this valuable resource. And if there's anybody who wants to make suggestions, come look me up. But I think that's what it is. So one of the things we are talking about is simple thing like someone is going to do their accreditation finish their SMP course in November, and then they're going to do the credit assessment in February. What can we do for them in between? Can we help? Can we coach? Can we give them practice sessions? I think baby steps, but if we actually just wear that empathy mindset, the SMS set, we can help each other out. Yeah.
Dorcas, any views on how they can have a piece of the action or get ready for it?
Well, I think, of course, we encourage our students, make sure you do some module that has covers mediation and negotiation. Currently, it's an elective. But I think I'm personally very encouraged because many of our alumni who even just graduated, they have been coming back, and one of them is here, a few of them are here, right? So I wouldn't embarrass them. But those who have actually studied mediation, and then they also have represented our university in some international mediation negotiation competitions. And then they've seen the use of it, and then they come back and help the younger ones, some of our current students who themselves are taking part in competitions. So I think that kind of community where not only alumni, I should also point out that many of our mediator friends also came to help us. Some of them are sitting here too in this auditorium. Many of my mediation friends in the community came to help the students, give them tips, let them know how it really is in the real world, right? Because sometimes not exposed enough to the real world, right? So I think that has been a tremendous help to our students. And this kind of exposure and creating that passion, people coming back to help, in the long run, I think we need to create a culture. So culture depends on the people really having that passion, passing it along and sharing, just like Chai say, older mediators sharing the less experienced ones. Right, so that is something I think even younger ones, even though you can't mediate a case, most of the time I will give the advice that, say if you're a law student, you're a lawyer, you use the same skills as a mediation advocate, which I'm sure like Francis, you'll be very familiar. Right, so if you know negotiation skills, you yourself can actually help facilitate the negotiation, even though you might not be able to practice or get enough cases. So I think we have reached this point where it's a bit saturated, where there are not enough cases, and there are lots of mediators who want to practice. So that is a difficulty which we have to probably address together and see what can be done.
In the interest of time, we'll take one more question, and then I'll also pass it on at the end to SMS for a final comment on the question. But the question that we have up here now is how useful is mediation in highly complex multi-party disputes? I think we've heard a lot about mediation, but this question really is about, how effective, how useful, and perhaps Chai, you can share with us.
Say, where's George Lim? Because he's told me a few stories about his 35-party mediation that got settled. So I believe there has been track record to say that yes, mediation is very helpful, and I think all of us here who do practice mediation know that even if you don't solve the whole case, so long as you can reduce the problem to a smaller size, you've already helped a lot. As far as an end user is concerned, that to me is a win. I don't have to have everything resolved, but I can cut it down to size. So I'm a firm believer that yes, mediation helps.
Dorcas, any quick comments on this same question, the multi-party complex discipline?
When I teach negotiation, I always say that you have multiple issues and multiple party is greatest chance to expand the pie because you can actually trade off lots of differences and so it's eminently suitable for mediation. That's my short answer.
Okay, excellent. So in other words, mediation works and you hear it from the academic as well as the practitioner's perspective. SMS, this one is for you. It says, are we pinning unrealistic expectations on SCM. It only applies where there are settlement agreements that require cross-border coordination, and how many would there be, or how many are there? So I think this is a chance for us to take perhaps a reality check and also see what is the way forward.
Well, we have two regimes for enforcement now. I mentioned the 2017 Mediation Act for domestic mediated agreements that are settled. So that's something that can be enforced under the current legislation. Then on the cross-border multi-jurisdictional one, we have the SCM. If you just go on the basis of what I've said earlier and look at what the SIDRA surveys show, and I think get a sensing of clients, businesses, why they would enter into one type of dispute resolution mechanism over another. I think enforcement, if not the highest, would rank quite high in the scheme of things. Having finality in that chosen mechanism. The last thing I want is to enter into a process, and then when I emerge with a position, I can't go and enforce it, and I got to enter into fresh proceedings. So I would say it ranks pretty high on that agenda. And if you take that as a starting point, then having the SCM would assuage a lot of that concern. So yes, we should not be unrealistic about it, which is why I said we now treat that as in the past and we move forward from here. But I think we must not forget that the SCM gives us an anchor to tell parties, especially in the days of large cross-border, complex, multi-party, multi-jurisdictional, and long-term, large-scale projects, which I think we see a lot of coming into Asia and ASEAN. Then I think in that context, the use of SCM, I think, could be quite profound because it creates that hurdle, it creates the solution to the hurdle that had hitherto been there, which is if I enter into this with you and you go back to your own country, how would I know that this will be something that I can enforce? And I think that if we can use that as a starting point and look at the kinds of agreements and contracts that are coming into Asia and the kinds of contracts that we are beginning to see on a large-scale cross-border basis, I am quietly confident that the SCM will provide, if not the magic pill, at least an impetus to growing mediation.
Yes. Thank you, SMS. With that rallying cry ringing in our ears, for us in the mediation community, the time is here, the place is now, and we really have our work cut out for us to basically just go and reap the fruits that are available there for the picking. So, ladies and gentlemen, please join me to thank our distinguished panel, SMS, Dorcas and Chai, and thank you so much for having us and spending your evening with us. Thank you.
Thank you, SMS and panelists, for an engaging discussion. I'd now like to invite Mr. Philip Fong, Managing Partner of Eversheds Harry Elias LLP, to present tokens of appreciation to SMS and to Ms. Ng Chai Ni. Ladies and gentlemen, a group photo will now be taken. May I invite Justice Belinda Ang, President Lily Kong, and Dean Goh Yi Han to join us on stage for a group photo with SMS and the panelists. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you for attending the Singapore Mediation Lecture and making this another successful year.